And welcome back to AZ's on the Fence. Joining me today is Stephen Richer, the 30th recorder of Maricopa County, and he was elected back in November of 2020 and took office January 2021. Prior to his election as recorder, Stephen worked as a lawyer and a business person. He holds a bachelor's degree from Tulane University and a master's degree from the University of Chicago and a Juris Doctorate from the University of Chicago Law School. Stephen and his wife live in South Phoenix, and he's joining us here today on Arizona's on the Fence. So, for those undecided voters out there, Stephen, what do you want them to know about you as the Maricopa County recorder?
That I'm a straightforward, no nonsense guy who's trying to make this office better and will tell you the truth about all things relating to my office. My office oversees three main statutory functions. I'm in charge of recording public documents, the vast majority of which relates to the real estate industry. I'm in charge of the voter registration process and database in Maricopa County. So we have about 2.4 million registered voters in Maricopa County. So if you're a new registrant, or if you make a modification, or if we have list maintenance to do, my office is responsible for that. And then I'm responsible for the early voting component of elections in Maricopa County. And I partner with the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, who does other components of the election. And so really those later two components, election administration and voter registration, have put me in the middle of quite a conversation about election administration and democracy in America that has been interesting and has afforded me some interesting conversations, and I've met some interesting people through it, but has also led to some unpleasant parts of politics and given me a glimpse into those that side of the world as well.
I can completely understand and imagine. I mean, you were part of the same election everybody else was in 2020. You take office in 2021, and they're challenging the results of the election here in the state of Arizona. Of now, all of a sudden, you have to help oversee those investigations. People were convinced that there was some fraud going on and some, some activities that weren't consistent with voter integrity. You helped investigate after the fact, and nothing was overturned. In fact, no election was overturned anywhere in the nation. Not just here, but during your investigation, did you find some improprieties? Did you come across some things that you would want to change going forward as being the new recorder, so that we don't have the perception from the public that there was improprieties?
Well, so that unpacks a lot, and I certainly heard from quite a few friends and political allies that they had concerns, apprehensions about the 2020 election. And so especially in the first few months of 2021, the county and I did a lot of things to try and look into various allegations and to try to offer answers to where there were reasonable questions. And to this day, I hold to that commitment. And so one of what I view as my core responsibilities is answering questions. And so for anyone who has questions about the election process, I would say, I'm here for you. We want to be a service to that. We want you to feel better about the process, no matter what you believe about past elections, no matter whether you're a 2 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10 in terms of your confidence in the election process. We want it to improve over the next 8 months, and we want it to improve going forward. And so really much of what I've done over the past 3 years has been to try to communicate better about some of the processes that we have already in place, to try to answer questions. We do election tours. I do live streams on the internet. We have webinars. We have seminars. We have papers. We have publications. We have all sorts of stuff that is meant to impart election administration information such that people can have the questions that they have answered. But I'd also welcome any questions by email, by phone. My office has a lot of people who are very passionate about this process, and they are here to assist you. Now, regarding the question of were there things that I found upon taking office that I wanted to improve? Absolutely. And voter registration is really where I have focused my efforts. So when I took office, Maricopa County had about 2.6 million active registered voters. We've now reduced that to about 2.4 million registered voters. And none of that is purging people, or none of that's doing anything that people would file a lawsuit about. That's just all making use of the tools available to us to do good voter list hygiene, such that our voter rolls, which are the foundation for a healthy election, can be in as good a shape as is allowed for under federal and state law. We've rebuilt the voter registration database. We've done things like tighten chain of custody controls. We've enhanced signature verification for early ballots. So those are other things that we're proud of, that we've developed over the last few years, that will hopefully all contribute to what I recognize as our main goal, which is to help as many people as possible feel confident about this important election process.
Absolutely. I mean, if people don't have confidence in our process, they won't vote. They're just, why should I vote? I don't believe my vote's going to be counted, or I believe somebody else has the power to change the election or to harvest ballots. What has your office done to make sure there's no ballot harvesting?
So that they won't vote, or they won't feel like the person in office is imbued with the authority of government, and so they won't pay attention to that person. Maybe they'll want to, I don't know, not even pay their taxes or something, because they'll
Right.
say, well, this government doesn't have legitimate authority, so why should I even pay my taxes? Or why should I even respond to law enforcement if this government is illegitimate? And so I think it really gets to the core of governance, is that the government has to have legitimacy, and that's why having confidence in this process. Regarding ballot harvesting, so for those maybe less politically attuned to the every single political debate, ballot harvesting is the term for an unlawful practice in Arizona, which is collecting early ballots from people who are not in your house, or not your family members, or not people for whom you are a caretaker. So, for instance, if my wife and I both get early ballots by mail, I can fill mine out. I can put it in that green return envelope. I can seal the green return envelope, and I can sign the green return envelope. And if my wife does the same, I can take hers as well, and I can drop them off at USPS, or I can drop them off at a voting location.
Yeah.
Important to know about each individual mail ballot packet is it goes out to only registered voters. So we're not just sending these out to random addresses, but we're sending them to people who have registered to vote. Each mail packet is tied to that specific voter, such that we can track it. And if for whatever reason that voter doesn't receive a mail ballot, he can call in and say, hey, will you deactivate my first packet and send me a new packet? And then when it's sent back, we scan the barcode on the return envelope, and we load a vote to that voter's profile to make sure the voter only votes once. And then we take an image of the signature on that return envelope, and we compare it with past signatures that we've received from that voter to make sure that it is consistent with that voter's signatures from the past. And only then, after we move it through an audit queue, will we move it ahead to a bipartisan team who ultimately takes it out of that green envelope and gets it ready for tabulation.
I mean, there you go. If you're listening to this and that explanation, it sounds like it should solve. It also sounds very, very labor intensive, and we have millions of votes to count.
It is labor intensive, but that's
a lot.
That's kind of an exciting feature, because it means that we get to involve lots of Arizonans in the process. And so every single major election cycle, we're looking to hire thousands of temporary workers who are paid by the county, who come in, they get training, they get integrated into teams of other temporary workers, and they will be working side by side with people from different backgrounds, people from different political parties, to execute this process for all of Arizonans. And so really, when anyone has concerns or doubts about the election process, one of my favorite things to say is, well, we'd love to have you join us. And in fact, you can go to getinvolved.maricopa.vote, and we will pay you essentially to be part of this elections process, and you'll learn about the process and you'll see the people working in it. And I think it's a really great way to get more visibility and hopefully, again, going back to that core goal of mine, build confidence in the election process.
How long should it take for us to get the results from that election? Are we talking 1 day, 24 hours, or is 2 weeks acceptable? It isn't to me, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
So let's talk about, well, obviously we have a July 30th primary, and then we have the November general election. So for either of those, if you get your early ballot back to the county by Sunday before Election Day, Tuesday, it will be part of the results that are available at 8 p.m. on election night, the first results release. That usually makes up about 65 to 70% of the total results. The next results that are loaded between 8 p.m. and midnight are, if you show up on election day, you get a new ballot printed, you feed it into the tabulator at the voting location. At the end of the night, when all the voters have left the various voting locations, the memory drives are securely removed from the mini tabulators at the voting location. They're wrapped up in tamper evident seals. They're given to bipartisan teams who drive into our central facility. They load those results over that period, approximately 4-hour period in which all the voting locations are coming in. That usually represents another 10 to 15% of the vote. The last 15 to 20% of the vote will be the people who drop off their early ballot either on Monday or on Tuesday election day. It is important that we still scan those in to make sure you haven't already voted, that we do signature verification to make sure it really is you, that we do an audit of it, that we give it to a bipartisan team to take it out of the ballot, and then that we hand it over to tabulation. That process doesn't happen, unfortunately, in a few minutes or even a few hours, and so that does take a little bit. The fewer of those ballots that we have, the higher the percentage of votes we will have within the first 24 hours. Now, if it looks like 2022 and 2020, then like I said, that will make up about 15% of the vote, 15 to 20% of the vote. And if races are close, then that 15 to 20% of the vote is still going to matter. Now, if somebody's winning by like 10%, 15%, then the networks are going to call that election for that person. For that last part, that should probably be available by, I think we would have 99+% available by the Friday after Election Day, Tuesday.
Well, it is what it is, and sometimes it's the process. If you've got people mailing in and emergency ballots and all kinds of other stuff cast, it can complicate it, but you try to get as many people to vote, I guess, as possible.
I'm happy to walk anyone through that process. I share your interest in having results available as fast as possible. I also share your interest, however, in making sure that only valid voters are voting. If you want to help us with the process, and then get us your early ballot back as soon as possible, and that will absolutely then be part of the first results that are produced at 8 p.m. on election night. And if everyone had their early ballot back to us at least 3 days before election day, then we would just click return at 8 p.m. and we'd have 100% of results available, and we would all go to bed, happy or perhaps disappointed, but at least we would know.
Yep, exactly. Stephen, Maricopa County Recorder, thank you so much for your time today. And for those listening, make sure you go to the website, www.arizonadecides2024.com. Thanks so much, Stephen, and good luck to you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. If anyone has any questions, just stephenricher.com.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, guys.